afternoon for everybody. It's a great pleasure to introduce you Andrea Conti. He's a researcher from Universidad Piemonte in Italy. Okay, he's working in a specific aspect of the second victim phenomenon, which is to learn what happened in other industries, because I'm sure that Andrea explains better than me, but it's clear that in other sectors of high reliability industries, such as energy, for example, you can think in terms of nuclear plane power, or also navigation, maritime navigation or aviation, that is clear that are industries in which error must be reduced and at the minimum level. So it's a very similar situation that in the healthcare system, and maybe we have an opportunity to learn from these other industries. And Andrea could explain us how is the approach in the ERNST consortium about this learning, and also what are similarities and differences among sectors. So Andrea, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and to present some, I think, very interesting information about this, how this phenomenon is managed in other industries. You should see my screen, right? Perfect. So I'm Andrea, I'm a medical doctor and a researcher, and I work in the Università of Piemonte Orientale, and in particular for the ERNST consortium, I am collaborating on the working group number 2, that is review and state of the art. So the idea of today's workshop is to go through 3 different industries from the methodologies of our scoping search. We explore the characteristic of different industries, their background, how mental health is faced in these industries, which stressful situation characterize the industries, and then we see something about the safety culture present in these sectors. Then we will see the experiences and programs implemented, their strength point and also weaknesses, then take home messages to translate them to the healthcare sectors. And then if you have some question, I will be happy to try to answer, of course. So only to have a quick recap, this is an overview of the state of the work of the working group number 2 of the ERNST consortium. This is the same slide that Professor Panella presented yesterday. And we are going to see 3 different industries that are highlighted here, are the air traffic control one, the railways, and the gas and oil. We are going to see them in a parallel way, so we can compare them and we can reflect about their characteristics. So the first question is why? Why we do this work? The first box, the gray one, you can see is the classical definition of a second victim in healthcare. But I would like to show you that this definition can be easily adapted also to other sectors, because any worker that is involved directly or indirectly in unanticipated events that involve people and that injure people can become victimized. And we are going to see that in some industries, this is very frequent, this is very common, and there are different systems that have been implemented to face this phenomenon. So yes, second victim is a phenomenon typical of the healthcare sectors, but we can find similar, very similar situation in also other industries. So methodology, this is a very important point because we performed a search on the internet, of course, through different databases, but in particular a scoping search. Why we did not use a systematic approach? The answer is very easy, because there is a huge heterogeneity about studies, about documents, and it was impossible to build a search string and strict exclusion criteria and to obtain useful information. So we thought to prioritize the content, namely the information, the data, the emerging evidence, rather than the container, the document type, or the study type. We used the classical databases such as PubMed, Scopus, and Google Scholar, but I also tried to implement new technologies, namely the artificial intelligence search that are not ChatGPT that generate text, but artificial intelligence to search in the web to find other information sources. All of them, of course, are checked and are validated, not, of course, information from unknown sources. So we are going these 5 different steps from the background through stressful situation and to experiences and programs for the oil and gas, railways, and airline traffic control industries. So we start from the background. 17,000 air traffic controllers are currently working in Europe. So this population is huge and deserve attention with regards to the safety and to the workplace environment. They have many responsibilities related to the stress and to the probability to become a second victim. For example, they need to control departure and arrivals, to monitor the assigned aircraft, supervise the assigned airspace, but in particular to ensure safety and to manage eventual incidents. This in general, but of course their tasks are more complex, more definite. There are several air traffic controllers working together, so we can state that they work in a very complex environment, an environment characterized by technology, by strict procedures, and in which they cannot make any error, because any error can result in death of people in airline crashes. Of course, as we know, errors and misses are possible, and this is why they, as we are going to see, they implemented a very useful and a very effective stress management system. But in particular, the environment is high demanding. They need to stay focused on their task, and this is why they have frequent pauses, frequent breaks through the session. But however, it is a very high demanding work and high demanding environment. The same for the high risk. They work in offices, in control tower, but in general, the airport is an environment with high risk of incidents. They also need to face stress related to information. They have continuously changing information from arrivals, delays, changing weather condition, for example, and some of this information is unpredictable. They also need to work on rotating shift and following defined and rigorous procedures. I would also like to add another important, in my opinion, point, that they need to fulfill stringent medical and psychological standards, both before training and also for maintaining their position working in the air traffic control sector. In the same way as pilots, they need to be to undergo to medical visits, to screenings, to check their condition. This is a characteristic that is uncommon in other works. For example, in healthcare, we don't have anything similar. We don't have anything similar also in oil and gas industries. This only to give you a general background of the main issues and the main tasks. Then we can move on the oil and gas sector. The number of workers is about 10 times 15 times more than the air traffic control one. But they have different responsibilities. Safety standards, they need to respect continuously high safety standards. So one of the things they say often is safety first, and this is particularly important because they are working with dangerous substances like oil, gas, and gasoline, but also they need to work to ensure production continuity and to maintain required production rate. So this population of oil and gas workers need from one side to manage the production to ensure the productivity of, for example, oil plants, and on the other end, they need to respect high safety standards. And as you can understand, sometimes it's difficult to balance these two needings. They also need to face different potential stressors. For example, often they work far from home and isolated from communication. Think about offshore workers. They stay isolated from communities for weeks. They need to face several different hazards, chemical hazards, physical one, etc., with the shifts varying with the different period of leave. In contrast with the ATC sector, for example, they don't have a shift only night, for example, morning and afternoon, but they have periods in which they stay on the offshore platform, for example, and periods of leave. They also have environmental concerns. Every accident, every incident in the oil and gas sector can become an environmental disaster. They also need to follow defined rigorous procedures, and they use different but high-level technologies. So we can see that there are some similarities between the ATC sector and the oil and gas, but we also want to add the railway sector. The population is like the half of the oil and gas sector, and they have similar, from under some point of view, similar responsibilities. From one side, they also need, thinking about the train drivers, they need to maintain safety and security of journeys, but they also need to ensure timeliness and a comfort journey for customers. Railways, also the railways population work in shifts, but different from ATC and oil and gas, they have extremely irregular working hours, and this can affect their stress rate. Similarly, they cannot decide when to take a break. I mean, if they are driving a train, they can't decide, okay, I'm tired, I stop here in the middle of nowhere. They also need to face environmental issues such as noise, vibration, and the microclimate of the driving cab. And this is also a solitary work. In the last years, the number of cab drivers is becoming the number of the trains are driven by a single train driver instead of two. And they also have to face monotonous tasks, especially in high-speed trains. So we can see some similarities and some differences between the sectors. For example, all of them need to follow defined procedures. They have high responsibility. They have different level of technologies to follow, but all of them need to face a situation that can increase the stress and can lead to incident and subsequently to stressful situation. So we tried to assess, to review the evidence about the mental health in these three sectors. Honestly, we didn't found a lot of research, and this is an important limitation of our work. but it's also an important message that we don't know everything in the sector. We don't know all the determinants. We don't know all the issues that this population have to face. For example, in the ATC sector, ATC controllers are mainly affected by stress, but also mental load due to the high work requirement. And they also have the fear of losing the job due to the selection. You remember that they have been selected for a psychological and medical condition, and they need to go through yearly checkup of their condition, but also insomnia, burnout, and also they experience psychosomatic components. These type of mental health issues are mainly characterized by traffic load, noise and distraction, the reliability and adequacy of equipment. The researches that I put here in the footer explicitly say that the reliability of equipment, for example, is a matter of concern for ATC controller, but also the shift duration. Remember that this part, the mental health, is mental health during normal operation. That is the substrate on which a critical incident or stressful situation can explicitate their consequences. With regard to the oil and gas sector, the mental health is affected by stress, but not by the workload, but in this case, by the coping styles. So there are different determinants of stress, for example, the physical and complex environment, for example, living offshore, the safety, the interface between job and family and social life due to their leave, their period of working on offshore and period on staying at home, the career and achievement, and the organizational structure and the climate. Moving then on the railways, the mental health was characterized and particularly affected by shift, but by stress, but in particular by workload, conflicting roles, and the irregular shift. Also, we can see the lack of support by coworkers, the noise, environmental factors, and the fear of losing the job that, as we can see, it's like a common denominator of these three sectors can determine this stress. So similarly to the background, we can find some similarities. We can state that all these workers are characterized by high level of stress. We can state like a baseline stress. They experience several environmental conditions, and this stress is mainly due to safety concerns about the equipment, but also stress due to different shifts. So we saw that the stress is common in the sector, and we cannot talk about stressful situation without taking in consideration this aspect, because the situation can exacerbate the consequences of this baseline stress. So this part was very difficult to be retrieved from the literature, because the number of studies assessing the stressful situation in the sector are very, very limited. But we can identify some common stressful situations. We can split them in near miss, so near incident or near accident. So incident that did not cause any victim, but had the potential to do this, but also disaster, accident, and other type of incident. For example, in air traffic control, one of the most common near incident was the separation infringement. So when the AT air traffic controller did not respect the separation, the time and distance separation between two flights, but also the runway inclusion. So an error that led to to, as you can see in the picture, two airplanes in the same runway. Of course, the disaster include air crashes and mid-air collisions, but they also have to face other type of incidents, such as criminal offenses, airplane hijackings, and any situation that put in risk the human life. And on the table on the right, that is a screenshot of the article you can see in the footer, we see the most common symptoms that air traffic controllers experienced after this type of event. The first and the most common one was the anxiety, but also working more cautiously and impaired sleep. And with other symptoms that are less common, we can state that this condition can impact on the work quality and ultimately on the safety of the operation of the air traffic controls. Moving on the oil and gas sector, we found, of course, the different events. With near misses, we can find a small pipe loss of containment, the non-observation of procedures and rules, or inappropriate installation of equipment, with several, and these near misses are related to several incidents moving from fire, explosion, and relevant oil or gas spills. But I would like to focus on the bullet point on the right, because the symptoms that have been described after a disaster that is very well known, the Deepwater Horizon fire and then oil spill, are very similar to the one experienced from the ATC controllers. And this is very important because we saw completely different events, but similar symptoms within the worker population after the incident. Then we check if we can see the same similar situation in the railway sector. In this case, the most common event is the near-miss collision, as you can see in the image on the right, but also incidents like suicides, collisions with pedestrian or vehicles, derailments, and close calls when a collision almost occurred. So also in this case, different incidents, but similar symptoms. Also in this case, the symptoms are gathered from the literature. So we can say that we can state like a first conclusion that independently from the type of incident, the second victim from these industries should express the same symptoms. And this is very important findings, in my opinion, because maybe with similar symptoms, we could use not exactly the same, but similar strategies to manage the situation. Here we can see a comparison between the different industries regarding the environmental condition, the shift stress, and the interface between job and family social life. But most important part, in my opinion, is that we, independently from the event, the outcome, so the symptoms after the incident are very similar. We can state that they are the same. So we saw that these three sectors are a high risk of incidents. They have a high risk also of stress. So the first consequence is that we investigated if there was the implementation of safety culture faced with these issues. So starting from air traffic control, we found a study regarding air traffic controllers, a study that was conducted in Sweden, in which the researcher investigated and interviewed the workers to assess the different aspects of safety culture. And on the left, you can see the emerging evidence from the interviews. The first one is that the reporting culture, so the open dialogue about the incident, was very good. So they were free, they felt free to express their sentiments, their impression, and their thoughts about the incident. And they also implemented meetings not only between air traffic controllers, but also with another important figure for the air traffic safety, that are pilots. So the meetings involving different figures were considered useful by air traffic controllers and educational to improve the safety culture. And they also expressed the impression that in the last years, terms such as quality and safety with regard of safety culture became more integrated with the ATC activity. So now they are not seeing quality and safety like things separated from the routine work, but as a normal part of the ATC activity. And it's important also to observe that at least 20% of all the interviewed persons believe that unsafe work was never given such attention. So in the past year, in particular in the past year, unsafe work was not mentioned, was not considered in the correct way. And also, this is another important emerging point from the study, that the managers, so the leadership, had a more positive perception of the safety culture than the non-managers. And on the right, you can see graphs taken from the study that express both the average score, the first one, and also the proportion of interviewed people describing a good safety culture. And we can say that the most two critical points regard the justness and the flexibility. So in this sector, one of the main problems is not, for example, the perception of the risk. Air traffic controllers are aware of the risks, of the hazard, and of the importance of safety culture, but they lack of justness and of flexibility to say, okay, this happened, so now we are going to investigate the root causes rather than use the blame approach to find the responsible person. So we saw that we can compare the ATC to oil and gas and to railway, but did we found a similar approach in the other two industries? For example, in the oil and gas, we found a similar approach regarding the leadership. Also in this sector, they found fundamental to have a positive commitment of the leadership. They also stated that a continuous monitoring and feedback is fundamental to implement an effective safety culture, and the need of practical training. So not only theoretical or paper training, but to do work, to do real work, to increase motivation and to increase the awareness about the importance of a safety culture. And it's important to say that if the study on the ATC sector was conducted in the UK, this one was conducted in China. And the next one on the railways was conducted in another country. So we can say that the similarities are not only between different sectors, but also between different countries. Also, with regards to the oil and gas sector, they pointed out the need of an open and positive environment that encourage communication. So an environment without a blame approach, an environment with a just culture. And also they state that this culture shouldn't only be applied, shouldn't only be disseminated, but should be also continuously monitored to improve it and to make it effective in preventing and in managing incidents. In railways, in this case, the study was conducted in UK, so ATC was in Sweden, oil and gas in China, and the study from the UK. They stated that one of the main problems was in this sector, the blame culture. In the other two sectors, they stated that they needed an open environment. In this case, they state, okay, we have an important pre-existing blame culture, in particular with the attribution of the culpability, in particular for the delays and for safety procedures. And in this case, this led to a sort of proceduralization. So making a lot of paperwork, making a lot of risk management procedures, but without a practical implementation. So a lot of paper that brought this sector to the compliance culture. So not a just culture, not a culture of managing the risk, managing the incident and managing the stress after the incident, but a culture of only reaching the needings, only filling the forms, only filling the paper to say, okay, now I did my work and it's not important the final result, but it's important that my paperwork was perfectly done. Another problem here was the staff turnover with the erosion of, they used this specific term that is erosion of conceptual understanding of rules, procedures, and culture. So this is another important point. And with turnover, we can also translate this concept in healthcare. And also the majority of respondents felt exposed of the implication of being found culpable for safety management shortcomings. After 4 major incidents that occurred in the UK, most of the respondents, without a safety culture, without an effective safety culture, felt anxious, felt exposed to the risk of having the attribution of culpability with regard to some incidents. So we can compare the sectors also for the safety culture. And in particular, we note that the importance of leadership involvement is transversal, as well as the importance of continuous feedback and monitoring, but also we have a different perceived importance of safety culture. So we saw that there are also some points in common between the safety culture in these 3 different industries. So now the most important part, let's move to experiences and programs in these 3 sectors. So we start with the air traffic control. We are lucky with air traffic control because we have an European regulation that states that each air navigation service provider should have established a critical incident stress management system from the January 2020. So this regulation was very important because now we can state that this approach, the CISM, the critical incident stress management, is implemented in all the navigation services in Europe. But more interesting is that they performed some years ago a study about the return of investment of the implementation of these systems. They estimated a cost 88 euros per worker per year, but they also saw some benefit, such as the reduced absenteeism and faster recovery of the workers, with a very high return of investment of 364%. So with a small investment, they had more than 3.6 times return. More interestingly, they estimated this return only considering absenteeism and faster recovery. If they put inside this estimation also the reduction of errors, the reduction of near miss, and the well-being of workers, probably this return of investment could have been higher. And they also stated all other important characteristics. For example, they explicitly stated that critical incidents do not necessarily have to experience an accident. For example, the separation infringement in which two airplanes are too near or with too small time separation. This is the most common critical incident, but also that the effect for the stress after a critical incident can affect also workers not exposed directly. For example, radar operators that they only see a screen, they don't physically see the airplanes. They can also experience this type of stress, and also that despite this type of workers are not directly exposed to the event, they are directly involved in the incident and exposed to the consequences. So we can state that this system is widely implemented in Europe, and I can also say that it's probably because of this European regulation that fostered this implementation. The absence of a common law can be also seen in the railways and in the oil and gas sectors. For example, in the railway, we have similar programs that are called not CISM, but CIRP, Critical Incident Response Programs, on which, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of data, we don't have a lot of information, mainly due to the fact that these programs are not standardized, but are mainly based on these 5 points. For example, the compassion and empathy from local manager. You can remember the importance of leadership in managing the critical incident consequences. The demobilization, the early demobilization from incident site, meaning that the train driver, for example, that assisted to a suicide should be immediately removed from the incident site and moved to a safe place. A time from the work, so paid or unpaid period of leave from the work to recover and to have time to go back to the normality, but also they state the importance of peer support. And in case that these 4 approaches are not sufficient, also the psychological and medical treatments. With regards to the data, as I state, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information. And on the right, you can see the result of a study assessing the CIRP implementation in Canada. Also in Canada, they don't have a standardized program. Each company has its own program. and without prior training. So workers were not trained or to face to critical incident and to stressful situation, but were only assisted after the event. How? Mainly with time of work, demobilization. Some of them, like about the half, got clinical support, and only a small part, 1 out of 4, used the peer support, or they searched help by themselves. So a completely different situation. In ATC, we had a structured, we can state, international program. Moving to the railways, we have like a general framework on which we don't have a lot of data, implemented very heterogeneously. Moving in the last to the oil and gas sector, I'm honest, we searched a lot, but we didn't find any structured program for critical incident stress management. So we tried to investigate why. Why they don't have a specified, a dedicated critical incident stress management program? And the answer we got is that the safety is not part of the safety management, the critical incident management, the safety culture are not part, a small part of the work, but they are completely embedded in their work environment. Probably in this case, we have also another bias that, in contrast with ATC and the majority of railways companies, oil and gas companies are private. So probably they have programs, but not publicly available. And I would like also to stress this sentence that is in bold, that is the inculcation of safety culture. This is directly taken from the study you can see in the footer, and it's important to understand one of the reasons why we didn't find any program for critical incident stress management in oil and gas industries. And they focus, of course, on safety, on safety culture, on safety management, but not because it's a part of their activity, but because it's alignment and is part of their business purpose. And not just because it is cost effective, but also because it means an improvement of the quality of the industrial life, and ultimately of the improvement of the work and of the production. So in the past industries, in the ATC, in the railways industries, yes, safety culture was important, but it was only a part, an important but a part of the entire industry. In this case, is completely merged with the other operations. So we can see also for the overview of experiences, a comparison. Unfortunately, as far as we know, a structured management of critical incident stress is required by law only in air traffic control. We don't have this requirement for oil and gas or for railway, at least at the European level. We have a structured program both in air traffic control and in railways, but the most structured one is the SISM from the air traffic control sector. The safety is embedded in the business. We saw that there is considered an important safety culture, and the consequences of critical incident are considered critical and a pivotal part of all these industries, but only in oil and gas, it is considered like the same thing of normal operation. And we have scientific evidence of economic advantages only for air traffic control, but some emerging evidence is available also for oil and gas and railway sectors. Not quantitative, we don't have data that can be analyzed, but there are some initial emerging evidence. So we made some comparison between these industries that at a first view, they can seem very different, with a different incident leading to different consequences. But as we saw, the workers experienced the same symptoms, the same condition, and they had, in conclusion, the same needings with regard to the management of the consequences of stressful situation. So we have three main messages that we can gather from this work, this initial work. Of course, the objective of the work group 2 is to complete, to expand this presentation, this knowledge with all the other industries. The first message is about the literature quality and limitation. We have, I must say that we have limited studies per sector, very limited number, and limited also in methodology. All of them used a different approach. Some of them performed questionnaires, other quantitative analysis, other are mainly like concept papers, but the majority use only descriptive data under a qualitative approach. The study design are very, very different, and maybe you saw that in the footer I put all the references, and a lot of them are older than 20 years. So we have very old study. And the question is, this evidence, this knowledge is reliable now after 20 years of continuous changes, of the improvement of industries, of radical changes of the sectors? I'm not convinced that we can take only this data and translate it to the present. We need to understand it and to use it to build more knowledge. So for the reason that a direct comparison was not possible, it was not possible also to perform a systematic review, but however, we can get some interesting take-home messages. So let's do an overview of the emerging evidence. The first one, we have three completely different industries. They use different terms, from the program names to the definition of incident, to the type of incident, and to the different concept and priorities in each industry. We saw also different stressors. ATC controller can experience different conditions, of course, rather than oil and gas workers, but all of them had similar mental health symptoms. So different stressor, same symptoms. Same for the incidents. We saw that they have to face different risks, different incidents, but with similar mental outcomes. And also we saw some similarities with regard to the safety culture. For example, the importance of the leadership, the importance of a positive environment. So the question is, it's time for standardization. Do we really need to work on different programs to develop something completely new from scratch, for example, for the healthcare or for the other industries? Or it's better to try to understand and to get as the maximum we can from the already available evidence, and maybe to put together all the works, all the professionals to get knowledge that can be implemented and in minimal part adapted to each industry? In my opinion, yes, of course, there is a lot of work that we need to do, but it's feasible. It's feasible, and maybe working together with other industries can also benefit our sector, the healthcare sector. As we saw that this industry has several similarities with healthcare, for example, the shift, the stressor, the high risk of critical incident and of near misses. We also saw that structured stress management programs are effective not only for workers' well-being, but also for safety and cost reduction. And please let me allow to say that in the last years, patient safety has gained a lot of importance, and also cost reduction, that the economy of healthcare system can be supported by these programs that can improve not only the workers' well-being, not only the safety, but also can lead to cost reduction. And finally, most of the used strategies, for example, the demobilization, namely the quick and early the mobilization of the worker from the site of the incident to a safe place, or the peer support, can be easily translated, can be easily adapted without a lot of adaptation, without a lot of changes to the healthcare as well as the safety culture approach. So thank you. I hope that you like the comparison between the different industries. And in addition to all these points, I think that maybe the most important take-home messages is that after a critical incident, all the workers, independently of the sector, experience stress. Oil and gas, railways, ATC, but also healthcare. We need to manage them, and the management strategies are very, very similar. So this work, I think, it's not only useful to increase knowledge about completely different sector, but can also support the implementation of second victim programs in healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's very, very interesting information. I have learned a lot of things about what happened in other industries. And I think that you have a summary in a very clear manner, 3 specific questions about this situation. So I don't know if any of our colleagues in this room have any question. Feel free to ask Andrea about this excellent review. Just only some minor aspects, Andrea. Just a question. Maybe it's a curiosity. Have you found the use of the second victim terms in other industries, or not yet?
I searched, of course, for second victim terms, and no, it's not used. Mainly they refer about employees or workers involved in a critical incident, but not the term second victim.
Okay, this is a very important point. And I think that is also one of the topics that we are debating in our network. So really, I appreciate very much this information. Well, thinking in our audience, because it's diverse, there are some aspects in which you think that because this is a work that is in progress. So in some manner, there are some specific issues in which you think our audience today could be participate, sending some information, sending some perspective, because maybe this is, as you explained, this is a very diverse situation in different industries, and also maybe in some parts of the world. It's not the same in Europe than other parts of the world. And maybe, I don't know, if you are thinking in some specific issues in which our audience could be support your study, and to participate in some manner describing a specific situation. For example, about critical incident response programs. I don't know if some of them could have some information or experience, because maybe it's a very common strategy to support workers and to address critical events.
Well, I think that we can say an important message that independently of the industry, independently of the sector, providing your experience will be useful. As we saw, there are a lot of similarities. So it doesn't matter a lot if you work on a train, if you work in an airport, or on an offshore platform, but consequences and probably also the mitigation strategies are very, very similar. So I think that maybe merging all our works, all our experience will benefit all the sectors and not only healthcare.
Yes, thank you. Well, one of the points that is clearly not only the one, but at least for me, was a great surprise, because according to the data that you saw us, near 400% of saving resources is possible introducing supporting programs. So I think this is very clear, but you explained that only in the aviation sector there are some data about. So I think this is one of the gaps in which our network could be focused in the future. I don't know if you have more details about this type of savings that maybe is possible, because the return in terms of money is a clear message for many stakeholders.
Yeah, I think that this is a very important point. And I would also like to stress a concept that this study estimating the return of investment was made only on the day off, and only, I go 1 second back to the slide, and only of the absenteeism. So if we put inside also the cost, the reduced cost due to higher safety, the reduced cost of all the aspects of patient management, I think that the return of investment will increase a lot. So, and maybe doing studies, conducting studies on this economics aspect can stress the importance of implementing these programs in the healthcare sector. So we can show the economic effectiveness of this approach.
Clearly, although it's focused on absenteeism is clearly one of the main problems directly related to the second victim experience in our institutions. So maybe we can also to estimate the loss of money that we are every year losing due to this phenomenon. Because I think that this economic issue is very relevant in terms to speak with other stakeholders. And one of our targets at network, as you know, is to increase the awareness about the meaning of this phenomenon in terms of outcomes in health, but also in economic outcomes. So thank you so much for highlighting the attention in these specific points that I think that are very, very useful. So I think that we are on time, Andrea. So I don't know if any of our participants in this room want to ask the last question, or it's time to go to the next round table. So Andrea, thank you so much for your effort. I think it's a very, very great work that is very relevant for our network and also for other industries, because we are sharing a specific aspect that you have described. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you all.
Thank you. So, Sandra, it's the time of the second round table for today. So you have the floors. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you for organizing this. I believe that we had a very fruitful day yesterday. Also, we started very strongly today, and I'm pleased to share a couple of slides to start the discussion, if I may. So here, okay. Am I getting this? No. Why is that?
You can see your presentation, Sandra, but you need to make it as a presentation view over here.
Sorry, I don't know how to do it.
Down here.
Okay, tell me.
Again, put it again.
Okay, so this is screen 2. Okay. Okay, let me do this.
Yes, and you
Is
could
it,
choose.
is it appearing or no?
Here,
Yes.
Is it?
we can see a presentation. You just need to make it as a presentation screen. So it's down here on the right. I'm trying to mark it with an arrow.
I don't know. Because I'm not.
Well, in any case, we can follow the screen. So, maybe, but
so, oh, sorry, it's never happened to me like that. I don't know why. Okay, you are straight. Where is it? View.
Sandra, maybe you can stop sharing and just start again. Sometimes it works.
Try not to go for the specific window. Just do the screen on the left, and then it will show your entire computer. And then you can just choose whatever you want to show.
Okay, is it showing like this or no? No.
Again, we can see the presentation, but you need to just make it as a presentation view.
Yeah, but I can't see how I can do it.
doesn't work, but usually there is no problem. But can you put the littlest screen on the bar? No.
I'm trying.
I think that you can show because you can follow the slides, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can try again.
I tried. I don't know. Okay. So the title of this World Cafe workshop, it's the third one of the series, Initiatives Promoting Research and Development on Well-being and Resilience of the European Healthcare Workforce. And I have the pleasure actually to invite my panel, starting with Professor Marius Ungureanu from Romania, Professor Inaf Sulovici from Israel, and Professor Ronald Battenberg from the Netherlands. Before I actually, can you make a short introduction? In particular, Ronald. So let's start with Ronald first, who actually kindly accepted my invitation due to miscommunication that was very late. So Ronald, you are an expert on health workforce. You are one of the big names in Europe as an expert of planning European health workforce. So can you give us a short introduction? And then I move on to Marius and Ina.
Yes, I can, and hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, Sandra. Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to join this session, and like Sandra already mentioned, I am a research coordinator at the Netherlands Institute for Health Services Research, NIVEL abbreviated, which is an organization, a not-for-profit organization here in the Netherlands, advising the Ministry of Health of our country, the Netherlands, but also a number of professional organizations with regard to health workforce issues. And you also mentioned the word planning, Sandra. That is indeed one of my expertises, so health workforce planning and how to do this. And on the operational side, how to build models and tools for health workforce planning is one part of what I'm doing together with my research group here in Utrecht, but also to translate it into policies for stimulating the inflow in training, of course, but also the resilience and the recruitment and retention of health workforces. And that is obviously the case and very urgently needed in the Netherlands, but Europe worldwide as well. As well. I'm also a part-time professor at the Radboud University here in Nijmegen, and I'm connected to 3 European projects that are relevant, I think, in this context. First of all, the joint action that has started this year on health workforce planning, and forecasting. The joint action is led by the Italian organization of Agenas, and as NIVEL, we are the competent authority for the Netherlands and also have a specific task to actually help and support the 19 countries that participate, European countries that participate in the joint action, to improve their health workforce planning models, data, and skills. And next to that, I also lead a consortium on medical deserts. That's another EU relevant project in this case, which is focusing on remote areas, rural areas, but underserved areas, and how these areas are along in all European countries deal with shortages and the attraction of health workers, for instance. So that is in short what I'm doing and involved in, and again, happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronald. As always, I have to say, Ronald has already helped the Maltese health system to start planning way ahead into the future, and I'm very happy to have him. Enough, and Marius, very quick introductions from your end. I know you've been here, but very quick.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Marius Muranu. I'm the chair of the Department of Public Health at the Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca, Romania, where I'm doing teaching and research. Health workforce research and capacity building is one of my main areas of focus, and I'm involved in a couple of European projects, some of them already mentioned by Ronald as well. And I have the pleasure to also apart from the ERNST project, to work separately with Ronald. We're colleagues in the European Public Health Association Health Workforce Research section. With Sandra, we are together in EMA, where Sandra is president. So I'm trying to link what the work that we're doing at national level with international work and colleagues from abroad in order to promote the exchange of information and best practices. And thank you, Sandra, for having me today in this panel. Over to you.
Again, thank you, Marius. Always a pleasure having you on board. And my co-leader for Work Group 4, but with whom I've shared so many experiences during these past 8 years, I would say. Enough.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Inaf Sulovici, and I'm a senior lecturer in the University of Haifa in Israel. And I'm a nurse originally. My profession is a nurse. So I don't have any nationwide project I'm working on, but I do believe in providing my research is focusing on quality of care, focusing on nurses specifically, but it's not just the nurse or the organization. I'm looking at both of them, the interactions between them. And I believe in educating the next generation of nurses to be informed regarding what are their rights and needs, and then at the same time how to avoid mistakes and create safer environment for the patients and themselves. But on the same time, since I'm working with many graduate students, PhDs and master's degree students, these are the future educators of future nurses. So I'm feeling like I'm spreading the rumor in the national level in this perspective that I'm educating the next educators of the next generation of nurses in order to provide better care in the field. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being such a champion to improve nursing education. I would like to share with you some information before we start the discussion. The first is the mega trends in healthcare. So we get different countries, different health systems presenting their mega trends. I've just come from European Health Forum in Gastein, and they came up, which is, it's very, very small. I don't know how to make it big. But actually they spoke about globalization, digitalization, demographic changes, and climate change. I move on to the Swiss National Science Foundation's National Research Program. They actually have an expanded list, the first being also the socio-demographic shifts. Also, adding on to aging and population growth, many people are living more in solitude. So these are new things that are coming up. The broadening meaning of health in terms of medicalization, also in terms of prevention, having more patients who are empowered. We're talking about the paradigm shift from patient-centered to person-centered care, therefore towards more shared decision-making. Of course, we are talking about digitalization, artificial intelligence, which has taken every sector, every industry by storm, and not least the health sector. And this can also have an impact on the health workforce. The Swiss also talk about the care models, integrated care, interprofessionalism, primary care, community care, moving out more and more the older adults from institutions into the community. Here I have a busy slide, and of course you're not seeing anything, so I will read it for you. Project Hope, at the end of last year, published 10 figures that are of note to actually give us a bit of a feel, statistics on 10 numbers to note for the global healthcare worker shortage. Number one, 18 million is the number of healthcare workers in the world that will be short by 2030. Number two, of course, they have the number 3, which is only 3 nurses for every 1,000 in China. 180,000 is the number of health workers who could have lost their lives to COVID-19. Of course, we don't have the exact figure, but this is the estimated figure, 180,000. 20% is the percentage of health workers in the United States who have left their jobs since the start of the pandemic. 21% is the percentage of Sierra Leone's health workforce that died in the 2014-15 Ebola outbreak. 1 million is the number of nurses over the age of 50 in the United States. 70% is the percentage of health workers who are women. 83 are the number of countries that fail to meet the most basic standard of healthcare workers. 2 is the number of doctors for every 10,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa. And 40% is the percentage of doctors in the US that will be over 65 and could retire in the next decade. Indeed, WHO International give us several factors that could contribute to this, being the first, chronic underinvestment in education and training of health workers in some countries, a mismatch between education and employment strategies in relation to health systems and population needs, difficulties in deploying health workers to rural, remote, and underserved areas, growing aging population, aging health workforce, rapid increases in chronic diseases, limited capacity of health education. And indeed, in Gastein, last week, they came up with this figure. I don't know whether you can see it, but I will try and explain it. Increase in the attrition of health workers due to health workers aging, health workers' deaths, migration, resignation. On the other hand, the green part, we have an increase in the demand for services. Why? Because we have an aging population, increase in chronic diseases, increase in patient expectations, and we are picking up from the backlog of COVID. I've sent you, the members of the panel, what I would like to discuss in this 3/4 of an hour that we have, which I believe are the healthcare workforce challenges, and maybe you can add other areas. So starting with working time and work-life balance, which goes in very much with the second one, the physical and psychological aspects, and the health and safety of our healthcare professionals. So let me start with Ronald.
Yeah, well, Sandra, thank you for showing this interesting and also key slides here on the major developments leading to these challenges. And I really like this list of challenges, not liking in terms of that they bring joy, they bring concern. But I do see a relationship that you also mentioned, right? So that if you look at the trends in working time and work-life balance, also in relation to psychological health or health workers, well, this is a relevant trend. And maybe it's also related to the last one, you know, feminization of the workforce and new generations, Y and Z. So that is the connection I would like to stress here. I mean, the percentage of women of the workforce is a key statistics, but I'm also worrying about putting too much emphasis on this, you know. I mean, we all know that there are differences in terms of men and women in workforces, but well, let's be honest, every worker counts, you know, despite their gender or age, I would stress here. But indeed, there is a trend. Then I must say, apart from the feminization, I think the new generations are the point we need to take into account in our research and policy. So working time and work-life balance, if we look at the Dutch new generations, as also Europe-wide, they can choose. They can have multiple options to choose from in either their education career and their career afterwards to work. And what you see is that careers are not straightforward. Not straightforward in terms of, oh, I was trained as a nurse and I will stay nurse until retirement. You see mobility more and more, which is a good thing, and in a way gives flexibility and gives the freedom to choose from the individual perspective. But the unintended consequence on the macro level is, of course, that we need to adjust our HR policies to these new generations and their requirements. They can choose. So in a workforce, in a labor market, which is, well, unbalanced in that way, we need to take into account. And that means that in recruitment and retention and in training the new generations, we need to focus on this. And also, well, if you look at our trainers, they also need to be aligned with the new needs and also the preferences of new generations. So that is, I think, one of the things I would like to bring in here.
So basically, Ronald, you are saying that every point, that every challenge here is somewhat interrelated. You cannot separate one from the other. They are very much linked, because if we are talking about the way we develop our training programs, our continuous professional development programs, they have to fit in strategically with the working time, with the work-life balance, the fact to have a feminization of the workforce and the new generations that we all know in terms of their behavior. At times, you know, we see differences across generations.
That's right. That's right.
Enough.
I have to say that you said previously, Ronald, exactly what I wrote for myself as the first point, that point 1 and 2 are actually related to 6, because I do think that, as Sandra presented in the previous slide, 70% of the healthcare workers are females. And still today, the social expectation from females is different from males. And we can't, you know, ignore that, meaning that the work-life balance for the healthcare professionals, since they are women, most of them, it's much harder than in other industries. So I don't think that we need to put it aside and say, okay, this is another point that we need to take into consideration. I think it's a major point in our discussion that we're talking about females that were raised in a male world, even though the feminism is here, and I know everything that my path is easier than my mother's and my grandmother's, but still we're doing something different in order to get ourselves in this world, in order to succeed, in order to work and try to have this work balance. So I do think it's supposed to be a major issue that we need to discuss, the feminism, the male workforce here. And then I think that generations is even much wider and richer than we think, because it's not just we need to adapt to this generation. usually, well, not usually, but most of the managers in the healthcare organizations, most of the policymakers in our legislations and the governments are not from these generations. They are even not millennials. They are from the previous generation, meaning that we have more than one generation apart between our current workers and those that are managing them and trying to connect with them and to help them. And I think that this gap is one of the main difficulties that we can see in the workforce right now in the healthcare system. And it was interesting to see yesterday in the presentation of Shino Shore, Professor Shino Shore, that he said that they saw that when they implement the no-fault compensation system, they also see that the young generation started to get into the profession of the OBs, because until then they felt that they are putting much more work than they receive, and that's why they didn't go to the OBs section. But now that they have this no-fault compensation system in Japan, we can see more and more young generation coming into the profession. So I think that we do need to find some ways in order to connect between those different generations and adapt ourselves to what they need in order to stay in the system. Because, as you said before, we have an elderly, the world is getting older, and we have more and more older people that we need to take care of. But then if we don't have enough young generation to get into the workforce, we'll just collapse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. Marius, you come from an important region in Europe, which has developed so much in particular over recent years. Can you tell us a bit, and you have visibility, Marius, of so many other regions of the world. Can you perhaps tell us, are the challenges the same in every region?
Yes, thank you so much, Sandra. I guess we all know the answer. More or less, it's the same challenges that we are facing with. And speaking of that, I just returned 3 weeks ago from the United States, and I was discussing with some colleagues there in 2 universities that I visited, and we ended up discussing about our health systems, and one of them was telling me, look, I'm so fed up with how the US healthcare system is being organized. There's so much fragmentation, there's so much politicization, and there's so much inequities in access for American citizens. And I told her, wait, are you sure you're not speaking about the Romanian health system or any other health system in Europe that I know of? So that is just to say that the challenges that we are facing, Sandra, are pretty much similar. But with regards specifically to health workforce, unfortunately I did not attend this year's European Health Forum Gastein, but I really liked I guess it was a picture, just the previous slide before this, and it's really nice, but in the same time, it's intriguing. And I would like to challenge some of this, Sandra. And again, I was not part of the discussion. So with the amendment that maybe these things have been discussed, but I'm really surprised to see what I see in my left-hand side. So it's attrition of health workers, and I see their aging, death, migration, and resignation. And I would say that for me, this is completely shocking to see migration alongside with 3 things that are, for every one of us, is impossible to escape from. We cannot escape aging, we cannot escape death, and we cannot escape resignation. This is more or less natural. We will all either resign, age, die. But migration is not impossible to escape from. And you know, speaking of Gastein, 6 years ago, I was invited in Gastein. It was the first and last time. And I will tell you something that I told there. And maybe that's the reason for which I wasn't invited since then. I said, look, with regards to migration, let's speak about the elephant in the room. Migration, to a certain extent, happens because some of the countries which are here in the room are actively recruiting from some other countries which are here in the room. And this is totally against the Global Code of International Ethical Recruitment issued by the WHO. And this is why we're seeing so many imbalances in our in the countries where I come from, or in other neighboring countries. And that is not to, you know, blame someone or something, because things are so complicated and so you know, complex. But it's just to say that we do not have to accept that migration is in the same category as resignation, aging, and death, because there are so many ways in which we can make migration work for the sending country, for the receiving country. And as a side note, Sandra and colleagues, I was so happy to see, and as a matter of fact, I've seen this on social media, on LinkedIn, that, and I guess it was a presentation at Gastein again, and I've seen that health workforce is finally on the agenda of the Belgian presidency of the Council of the European Union, because we need to discuss about health workforce at the level of the European Union. And specifically, we need to discuss openly, you know, about the elephant in the room, about the fact that we have these really complex and complicated flows within the European Union, which do not work equally good for all of the countries in the European Union. And to be on a more positive note, Sandra, I have been recently interested in the topic of circular migration. Maybe some of you are familiar with the topic. The International Organization of Migration, I'm sorry, ILO, the International Labour Organization, has been discussing about circular migration for a number of years. And Ronald, maybe you've been involved in the previous joint action. There was specific work done on circular migration, but still we're not where it should be, where it should be. So basically, circular migration means that there's a flow of you know, an individual living from one health system to another, and then going back. I mean, there are several definitions, but in my acceptance, this is rather broad, you know. But they say that we should have a triple benefit, you know, for the source country, for the destination country, and for the individual themselves. And I have been part of a project. We conducted some qualitative research on Romanian doctors working in Germany, together with Alan Kuhlman. Many of you know Alan as the president of the Health Workforce Research Section. And we identified 4 patterns of Romanian doctors working in Germany, and at least 3 of them are being characterized by the fact that they feel the need to give back, to do something for the health system where they received initial education, training, and we as a health system were not ready for that. Here in the country, I've been discussing with county public health directorates and hospitals, and although they do have needs, they're rather clueless on how to make that work. And so I believe that migration is not that big of a, you know, that tragic of a diagnostic. We need to accept that migration is a reality. We cannot escape that. It's everyone's freedom of choice. But in the same time, I'd like to highlight the fact that we can work with migration. We can make it work so that we have a more equitable, you know, return on everyone. The source countries, the destination countries, and the health professionals themselves.
I believe I do understand what you are saying very well, because for many years Malta used to have a brain drain. We used to train and educate doctors on the Maltese taxpayer, so to speak, because of course education is free. Then as soon as they would have done their 2 years residency program, we used to have brain drain, even of entire courses. So, and the solution from Malta was that the Medical Association of Malta, through a very able president, managed to convince the government that if you don't want this brain drain, you need to improve the conditions, including salaries and working conditions of doctors. And it was a time when the Prime Minister at the time understood and actually gave the Maltese doctors better conditions than they had before. And that brain drain was reversed. You know, Malta being, having been a Maltese colony for 200 years, we're very close to the British healthcare system. And we even managed to get the foundation program UK, which is the 2 years post medical school, where Maltese graduates can go to the UK for the residency program, and we can get British graduates to come and work in Malta. And in fact, this has worked very well. Maybe these are solutions, Marius, about what you have been talking about. And yes, I do agree with you that we cannot just let market forces to give us the solution, because yes, this is something that's happening across the world, not just across the globe, not just in Europe. We see workers from the Philippines, from India, from moving to other places where they can get a better salary. Ronald and Dina, I don't know, Ronald, maybe you are itching to actually give some answers to Marius and also to debate Marius on this. I can see it in your face.
Yeah, no. I think Marius is rightly pointing at let's say the weak spot, or the spot that hurts. And I don't hope so, Marius, that you're not re-invited at Gastein is the reason for that presentation. And but you're quite right. It's an elephant, but how difficult it is to move an elephant, or to not to kill an elephant, or let's say control an elephant. It is a huge problem, you know. And what you rightly are addressing is the unintended consequences. We are all maybe in favor of free movement of employee and markets, etc., and giving flexibility and have open borders, etc., but not as long as these unintended consequences, and of course I need to use brain drain is a strong word, is the result of that. At the same time, there's a similarity within countries, of course. If you talk about regions, so that was the point that Sandra was also bringing up. Also within countries, we see, of course, brain drains from those workers who stay in stay around the areas where they are educated, for instance, and remote areas that have much more difficulties to attract and retain health workforces. And so that actually implies that in health workforce planning and policy, or whatever you can call it, we might not need to think in terms of countries and nations, but in terms of regions and needs. And we all agree, I think, that the best thing would be that countries are self-sufficient and have a policy that is aimed for self-sufficiency. But on the other hand, we see those mobility trends, and we need to include this in a policy in a way. And I must say, this is actually multiplying the problem, because we deal with shortages on the national level, and but how to also to deal with the division of those shortages and the disparities of those shortages among regions, among countries. And actually that pleads for a collective or a European or maybe a global vision on this, but also accordingly the policy instruments. And there's the problem, of course. What are the policy instruments? What are the policy options to do this? Because you refer, Marius, to the act and the regulations, or the agreement that we to avoid brain drain, but still it's related to the migration as such. This is such a complex problem to tackle. But I agree with you that the solution should be among the countries and the dialogue between the countries. There's no other way, I think. Closing borders or penalties for movement, that will not work as long as the labor market conditions are there. People move for financial reasons, but also for non-financial reasons. And we need to take both into account. And well, it remains an elephant, but maybe Einef has the answer to this.
Yeah, I want also to make a point, which Marius has mentioned with regard to resignation. Here, the term resignation is that actually we have seen a phenomenon, in particular which was happening before COVID, but then COVID actually shifted it to entirely new higher levels. Actually, healthcare workers leaving their profession and moving completely to another sector. Doctors moving into other sectors like IT, for example, or into business, or having nurses who would be in hospital. I see this in Malta. And then all of a sudden they become medical representatives of companies. So they change completely. They are no longer in healthcare. And perhaps this is something which tarnishes their vision, their dream when they were kids. I want to become a nurse. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a physiotherapist. And then when they are, and they would have painstakingly reached that level of expertise, they say, I cannot take it anymore. I need to leave the profession. Starting with Ina, is this something that
I have to go back to the elephant. I'm sorry.
You have to go back to the elephant, sure.
Let's go back to the elephant, because migration is not something new. It's not something that happened because of COVID. It's not something that only happened in the last century. It's something that I guess it's from the beginning of the humanity. People are moving. As Ronald said, it's not only financially, it's not only for occupation. There are plenty of reasons why people are moving from their homelands, and it's something that's happening all the time. And I think that it was Barack Obama in the United States that he believed that the gates should be open for education specifically. I know that this was one of his statements, that he's opening the gates for higher education in the US in order to get professionals and healthcare professionals, of course, as well, to get educating in the US, to be more educated with their vision of how health should look like. And then he encouraged those people to go back to their homelands and spread the education that they received in the US. And this is something that I really liked about it. It was migration in the way that people moved from their homeland and stay in the hosting country, but it was, we're going to put all of our effort in order to educate people that are not going to stay in our country. This is another way to look at migration. And then they're going back to their country in order to spread the rumor, to implement the right structures or the right interventions or the right policies. So migration can be also good. So I'm not sure if I would call it as a problem, but I think it has some benefit if we are, not all of people that migrated will stay in the hosting country. Some of them will go back to their homeland. So maybe we should see it as an opportunity to spread the way to provide good care around the world, because we're talking about globalization. But then at the same time, you presented, Sandra, the way that Malta dealt with this problem, and you talked about getting better salaries. So it's again going back to the money. And my thinking was, is it really just the money? Maybe, and this is like an hypothesis, maybe if the healthcare system will be more no-fault system, maybe if we will have better culture, safety, and safety is not only for patients, safety is also for the healthcare professionals, a safe healthcare system for the healthcare workers. Maybe it's another incentive for health workers to stay in, even if the money can be better in another country. So maybe it's not all about the money. Maybe it's about the environment that you are living in and in your workplace. So this is my 2 cents about the elephant and how can we might deal with it or enjoy it even in a way.
Okay, with regard to what the point I was making earlier, healthcare workers actually leaving the profession. What is the experience?
So I think that from my perspective, I think it's getting into the big circle, the blue circle, like it's attrition. attrition is not only going for pension and retired, attrition is also leaving the profession. And we have plenty of studies talking about intent to leave the profession in nursing. I guess it's in other healthcare workers as well. So I know that the COVID probably was a big deal for the healthcare professionals, especially for those that are that worked in the hospitals, saw the ill people and treat them with all the workload that it created emotionally and physically on those workers. And I must say, I cannot blame them. And we're in no blame policy right now. I cannot blame them leaving the profession. And I think, again, that we need, in order to avoid this attrition of younger people, we need to try to find out how we can speak on the same level. Again, as I said before, we have managers that are older generation, and we have the generation Y and Z, and they are leaving the profession because, as Ronald said before, we're not providing them what they need or what they want even. Like, they know how to say, I want this and this and this, and if we're not providing it, they will just leave. So they will go and work with their medical companies, and they will go to be in the business field. Like, they're not looking to work in a workplace that is not providing them what they think they need. So again, we're going back to this list of that you have it in here, that we're talking about generations and employment and the attrition. And if it's not attractive, they won't come. And attractive is not just money. That's my point.
Okay, Marius and Roland, what's your experience on this? People, healthcare workers leaving the profession?
Yeah, well, I very much recognize and echo what INEF is addressing. Same here in our small country of the Netherlands, with the dense population and new generations coming up. I repeat also the thing addressed that I mean, it's not the money indeed. It's the non-material incentives that count, since the labor market is an unbalanced labor market right now. So that simply puts more pressure on recruiting and retaining health workforces. And if they are trained, and for instance, midwives in our country are trained, motivated, and then they enter the labor market. And I believe the latest statistics that about 20% leave the occupation within 5 years, in the very first 5 years. And that's exactly the critical period of starting your career. And so that is critical. And if we know this, then the onboarding, or whatever you can call it, is crucial. And that doesn't mean to do anything to keep them in and to change everything, but also to make it appealing and to connect those young people with the other young people and make them comfortable and say, okay, this is your career, or let's say career, this is your way you can develop within this organization or within your occupation. And I mean, young people don't want to be locked in like their parents were, you know. I think that is a psychological phenomenon, and they want to have freedom and choice. And so you need to anticipate, and that might imply that you lose them, but well, the best thing is to move with them and make them feel, and try to also align the organization. And it starts with the education, of course, because in the education, the expectations are, let's say, set of what is your work going to be after training. And we all know that health educations are practical trainings, of course. They directly are confronted with training, so that's important. And also at the beginning of their career. And we cannot avoid, of course, that they make other choices along the way. That is, I mean, that is a fact of life, and it's a fact of choices. But we need to adapt our organizations, the beginning also with those who train and those who also become the supervisors or the coaches or the, well, let's say the mentors of this new generation. And that is, I think, critical because either way, training and development remains, let's say, the engine of the workforce. And we need to keep investing in this.
Yeah, Marius?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I cannot agree more with Inav and Ronald, and I'm looking at the time. I want to be just really short because they said pretty much everything. One thing that I want to stress out is the fact that most of the times people leaving the medical profession, they won't necessarily do it because they don't want anything to do with the medical profession. It's also because we have such a rigid system where it's our way or the highway. And the lack of flexibility and lack of, new professions and in new career pathways is many times the cause for which these people, otherwise really valuable, are leaving. And as Ronald was saying, I'm sure that we will soon reach a point where we will not be able to do that anymore because new generations, they will just not accept these terms, and our health systems will be in the face of a very pragmatic choice. Do we change or do we, cease to exist because we will not have people getting into the medical professions anymore?
Yeah, one last thing that I would like, because since we are part of the cross-section ERNST, we talk about, of course, within the subject area, ERNST standing for European Research Network for Second Victims, and therefore it's very much within the subject area and the scores of patient safety and of healthcare professionals becoming second victims in situations where adverse events, patient harm has taken place, and also ERNST has widened that definition. So I invite you actually to visit our website. But within this debate, we always say that we are as strong as our weakest link. And what has happened? That with this shortage of healthcare professionals trained for at least a minimum of 3 years plus, we are now having to do with care workers many times having been trained for a month. And this is the reality. We've developed a new batch of healthcare workers to support nurses. Many jobs and tasks that used to be done by nurses after years of training and having to do it with passion, everything, I always say that everything that we do with the patient has to be based on knowledge. Washing of the patient, what are you doing during bathing of the patient? You are watching for any symptoms, any signs that could add value to the diagnosis or to the holistic management plan. Now, what are we having? We are having healthcare workers, care workers, often subcontracted with minimal training, taking over tasks of people who were at least minimum 3 years trained in very disciplined methods. And this is something that perhaps we're not talking about it. So, can I start with Ronald about this? Are you aware about this, Ronald?
I am, Sandra, and it's interesting that you your argumentation, because if we talk about task shifting, but more specifically, what you mentioned is well known as job carving. And this currently this is a buzzword in our Dutch ministry. Job carving as one of the solutions for the health shortages, improving efficiency, etc. And as such is perceived as being one of the, let's say, partial solutions for shortages, work pressure, etc. So, and that's also, let's say, the angle where you look at this. And as such, of course, the idea would be, is not wrong, right? That we also know that nurses and health workers spend a lot of time on tasks that they are trained for, of course, but not are well, administrative tasks, but caring tasks, for instance, that in a way can be carved or delegated to other professions that support them. Nothing wrong with this as such. But if it goes too far, like you are arguing, right? If as soon as they enter their, let's say, core business or their scope of practice, then I would say then this is a barrier, and we need to be very careful in terms of job carving and task shifting, and of course also not throw it away. I mean, because I truly believe that these are can also be ways to connect occupations and make teamwork better, and do something about and try to innovate the occupational structure or the skill mix, you know. But you're quite right. This can be dangerous as well, or dangerous. It can be a threat as well. And that actually supports the thing that we need to carefully think about these type of policy options of what I call job carving. Yeah.
Enough?
I have to say that first of all, I agree with you and Ronald. I think it's very dangerous policy in order to try to deal with this shortage, to go to this path. But then, at the same time, I'm thinking about, again, from the nursing perspective, that this is what I know, that the nursing job increased over the years. The responsibilities are getting wider and wider. The expectations are increasing as well. And then from one hand, we have those expectations that are raising from what a nurse should do and know. And then from the other side, we have, and we talked about it yesterday as well, and today, the previous presentation regarding the role of standardization that should make the environment more safe, but on the same time, it's putting much more burden on the employees because they need to go through the checklist of all the things that they need to, those health indices that they need to follow. And then again, instead of working with the patient and helping the patient and caring for the patient, they're working for, you know, any checklist that they are working with. So I'm feeling like there is a pendulum that is just shifting from side to side, and we need to find the
Equilibrium.
Yes, equilibrium, in order to not put so much on our healthcare professionals, but then at the same time to keep the safe environment that they should work in. So we need to find the balance. That's how I feel about this topic.
Thank you very much. And Marius?
Yeah, so continuing from where Ina left, I fully agree with this idea of balance, and also I would add transparency, because let's be honest, there are so many situations, as Ina and Ronald was saying, where we can design some job descriptions which do not take more than a couple of months of training, and then those people do those jobs, but we need to sit at the table and see which are those tasks, and be transparent about them, and make sure that those people who are trained to do those jobs are doing exactly that, and that there is no risk for the patients that they're seeing, or that they're coming into contact in one way or another. And so as with migration, I believe it's what we make of it that really counts, and not necessarily the fact that it is happening. So I do believe that we can manage it so that it works for the best for everyone that is involved.
I would like to invite Jose, Boyana, others who are participating. Maybe they would like to join in this discussion. Jose, being the chair of the section, what do you take from the discussion that we've just had?
Yes, thank you, Sandra, for conducting this session, and all of you for your interesting suggestions and this debate. I think that it's very difficult to address how to ensure the well-being of professionals, and perhaps all the things that you are describing during this debate are very relevant. But all the time, I am trying to translate into the second victim phenomenon some of your suggestions. And indeed, a feminization of the sector will be a very, very relevant factor that not ever is considered when we are conducting studies about second victims. We are describing the situation, and also we are describing support interventions, but maybe there are some factors that you are describing. Also, job carrying, I think, is one of the strategies that has not been applied yet in this sector, and maybe it's possible also to think in other terms than support intervention, because preventive approach maybe is also very useful, and there is not many experience across the world. So maybe this is other relevant issue. And the last thought is, the last point is regarding your comments about new generation, because my experience in Spain with the students, the future generation of healthcare workers is very, very similar that you are explaining, and they really don't accept in the same manner their attitudes or occurrences that we, life in the past, and today it's completely different attitudes, the manner to respond, and also the commitment with the targets of the institutional targets. So I think this is other source of change that we must consider when we are talking about second victim. Sorry, because all the time I am applying to the second victim, but of course is our main objectives in this network. So thank you so much. I think that for me, these specific issues are very, very relevant. I don't know if you want to comment on some of the thing about. Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, any other comments? First of all, I would like to thank the panelists who have been very active in this session. Actually, in particular, Ronald, that you bring so much experience from Nivel and from your work as a professor in this with expertise in this area. Of course, Marius, long years of expertise in your various work, and Enough, you bring not only the perspective from Israel, which is important to you also understand, not just the continental Europe and perhaps Malta being very, very southern and in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, but also having other regions. You also get very much the nursing perspective, which we all understand maybe is the most crucial of the whole lot of healthcare professionals where we are really facing problems in terms of numbers. Thank you so much, and I give the floor to Jose.
No, thank you so much, Sandra, and of course to our panelists. I appreciate very much your contribution and your participation in this roundtable. It's great for all of us. Thank you so much. And we are on time. This is other good point for today. And we move to the following roundtable. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hello.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hello, let me to introduce myself. I am Jose Mira from Spain. I am working in this network as chair. And this means that I try to collaborate with my colleagues from several countries. We are really 39 countries working in this network. So first of all, I would like to say thank you for accepting to participate in this roundtable. It's great for us. And it's, as you know, in the COS Association, one of the targets is the collaboration among actions. And we would like to invite you in this forum, this international forum, our fourth international forum, just to interchange some perspective, approaches, and ideas that will be useful, like a cross-fertilization approach to improve our activities. We are happy because we continue with a new action in the next 4 years, and there is an opportunity to use of the learning in these new activities. Thank you so much for your participation. And if you agree, I think that we are interested in know more about your projects, about what are the targets, how you are ensuring dissemination and communication, and of course, some ideas and open debate about the future, because all projects have the last day, and what happened after the last day is one of the challenges for all of us. So what are you planning? What are you thinking about the future? Because during 4 years, you are working hard. So it's a good opportunity just to open about what is possible to do, because I am sure that it's not simple, but maybe among all, we can find some ideas. So let me to introduce you to our audience. They are following this session through YouTube. And well, following the order of the agenda, it's my pleasure to introduce Wikkel van Stalduinen. I think it's right, yes?
Yes, it's good. Oh, call me Willeke, that's
okay.
Sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Well, you are the vice chair of a cost action, Net for Age Friendly. It's a very interesting project, a different one. I read some information about your action, and really is different than others, because True. It's very open, I think that's say. So she's working in the Leiden University, is right? Yeah. And if you want, you can start introducing some specific issues about your action, if you want. And of course, we can open a debate after a very short presentation from each of you, okay? So we let the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. And I apologize that the chair is not available, but she had another conference to go to. So yeah, I will do this. I will share my screen. I hope it will be visible. Is it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
It's working perfect.
I'm going to tell you about the cost action 19136. We are entering the 4th year of our cost action, and it's about the international interdisciplinary network on smart, healthy, age-friendly environments. And now I need to how to click through. Oh, here. The concept behind the cost action was developed in 2017, when Karina Dantas and myself, we submitted a proposal for a so-called thematic network for the DG Santé in 2017, and it was approved in 2018. In that year, we submitted a joint statement and a framing paper on the topic of smart, healthy, age-friendly environments. Smart, healthy, age-friendly environments aim to achieve active and healthy living, in which we combine the physical and the social and digital environment of citizens of all ages to improve their health and their well-being, so that we can have so they can live in healthy environments. And from this idea, we submitted a cost action proposal in 2020, and it was approved to our big surprise at once. So we think, oh my gosh. And so now we are working with researchers and stakeholders from all sectors. We have involved the quadruple helix in our action, that is the citizens or citizens organizations, public authorities, and standards organizations from all kinds. Businesses, caregivers, and non-governmental organizations are represented, but of course that is normal for cost actions. Academics and scientists are about 70% of our population. At the moment, we have 51 countries involved and 74 MC members, and our network consists of about 700 people. As you will say, our work is organized in 5 working groups, and there are 3 mainly topical working groups. One is based on the user-centered design of ICT solutions, of environments. The second is on the achievement of integrated pathways for health and well-being. The third is the focus on the digital solutions and large-scale uptake of these solutions. And then the fourth working group is not much topical, but more on the on the facilitation, how to get funding, how to get to develop a successful business model. That's the working group 4. And all these results of these 4 working groups should result in one reference framework of good practices, guidelines, standards and guidance for municipalities, for citizens, or for scientists to implement smart, healthy, age-friendly environments to achieve health and well-being. That is the main purpose of our action. So that is what we think, and the thinking behind is that people should not adapt to environments or solutions, but that we should provide solutions and environments that are fit for the persons itself. So that is the overall arching idea of us to create sustainable built environments, inclusive and accessible environments, digital technologies, and health and care for everyone that needs it. As we are focusing on the dissemination and communication, one of the first actions that we did in our cost action was to define our branding and visual identity, and this is how we think. We are very strict on it. For instance, that if you want someone is applying for a dissemination grant, and these visuals are not there, then the person doesn't get any funding, or so that we are very strict on that. Of course, we guide the person in that sense. We have also developed a flyer, what is it? And a website, of course, and we are active on social media. LinkedIn is the most favorite of our actions, and Twitter also, or Twitter X is what's nowadays. Instagram is not so much our thing, because I think we're a little bit too old for that, because lots of younger people are using Instagram and not so much by us. And also one of our first action was a call from the UN for the Sustainable Development Goals, and we submitted the SHAFE concept and the cost action as a good practice. And it was acknowledged as a good practice in 2020. So that was a real, visibility on our action. And then in September of this year, our chair, and that is Karina Dantas, she's the second from the left. She was invited to be the representative of our action in the UN in New York. We also presented shortly at the Rural Pact Conference that was organized by the Rural Pact Conference, but mainly to focus on the position of rural areas in Europe. And we were also present, for instance, in the cost actions that all considered with aging. That was a meeting organized in Brussels. And for the sustainable future, we think that we can hopefully transfer the cost action and its network to the SHAFE Foundation that we founded last year, so that we can have the work on smart, healthy, age-friendly environments for the future. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your great presentation. It's very, very clear. Thank you so much. So following the agenda, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carola Orrego from the Abadis Dona Bedia Foundation in Spain. She is working on patient safety and quality of care for some years ago, and specifically from the foundation. It's one of the most active institutes in Spain in terms of European research projects. So it's my pleasure to say you thanks for coming with us and also to give the floor to you. Thank you so much, Carola.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, it's right. Yes, perfect. It's working now.
Thank you for the ERNST Collaborative Network for the invitation to this session on behalf of the safest partners. And congratulations for this ERNST forum. I think it's a great opportunity for exchange experiences and learning from each other. I will present the safest project, that is the acronym for improving quality and patient safety in surgical care with standardization and harmonization of perioperative care in Europe. This is a project, a research project funded by the Horizon Europe, with a specific call focus on enhancing quality in healthcare. So we know what is the magnitude of the adverse event. It's a topic that is very relevant for the ERNST collaborative. And we know that they are responsible or accountable for a high burden in terms of the economical burden, but also in terms of the healthcare burden. And between these surgical adverse events are considered the most preventable and also the most frequent. So we know also that adopting evidence-based practices can improve patient safety and surgical care. So the main objective of this project was to improve and harmonize patient safety. So the focus on the implementation and learning from this, the implementation of this practice, also identify contextual factors that inhibit or promote the adoption of evidence-based practice. This project is not only focused on hospital, also we have ambition of including the entire patient journey, including the pre-operative outside hospital, but also the post-operative outside hospital. We have 10 partners from 8 countries, covering different types of skills and areas, including clinical areas, academic, and also umbrella organizations at European level. And we also have 10 hospitals that are participating from 5 countries. As usually in this type of project, we have different work packages. We started defining the safest standardized practice, the evidence-based patient safety practice in work package 2. This is our work package that's already finished. We started with a systematic review, and then here we involved representative for the 27 member states, and we constitute a group, the scientific advisory group, and I think from the perspective of this session is quite important because we started involving a group of multidisciplinary stakeholders from the very beginning, and we agreed with them this the most relevant practices. And then we are now in this stage self-evaluating the hospitals against these practices in these 10 hospitals. And at the end of October, we will start with the prioritization and action planning, where the hospital will have the opportunity to agree on where to work during the next upcoming years. This is a 4-year project. And then during the implementation process, we will form a quality improvement learning collaborative. And parallel to this, we will evaluate and monitor using mixed method. And I think also relevant for this session is that we have overarching work package that is about patient empowerment for patient safety, where the focus is learning how to better involve patients in their safety. But also we have 2 work packages, one for dissemination and communication, and another for exploitation and sustainability. So trying to answer the question that the coordinators asked, the coordinators of this session asked, to how the project contributes to influence political decision-making or impacting practices or behaviors, or contributed to new line of research. We have different results expected for this from this project. We have decided the patient safety practices. We have guidelines, lay language material, training material, toolbox. We have an online benchmarking platform that is already ready for the first stages of the project, and we have ambition talking about the future of creating an international collaborative network for patient safety in surgical care. So having it resolved, we also had a stakeholder mapping where we have different types of stakeholders, including policy levels, influential accreditations, organization, because to evaluate hospitals again, the recommendation, we can transform this recommendation in a standard of care. So we also think that involving organizations is relevant for dissemination purposes, and of course, quality and patient safety organization and patient and population. We have different key messages defined for the dissemination and communication purposes. Of course, we want to inform on the practices we have agreed. We want to identify the barriers and facilitators for implementation, the knowledge on up-to-date implementation, the link between the standards and outcomes, and also explore exploitation opportunities. And the key strategy here is what we call knowledge mobilization as a process that can lead to the outcome of impact by catalyzing change through different strategies, engagement and networking, educational events, co-production, embedding procedure and practices, commercialization, science and communication, social media, and targeted dissemination. And all these activities are addressed in different stages of the program. And just to give you some examples, for example, at the policy level, we are already finished with semi-structured interviews with the national contact point and the regulatory agencies or quality agencies accreditation. The idea to identify what are existing policy and regulatory frameworks in order to identify how we can integrate the knowledge that is or the evidence that is emerged from this project into the existing framework. We think it's a good way to integrate or work with policy involvement and facilitate decision making. We also are conducting, or we plan to conduct a costing exercise for intervention in order to generate a business case. We also have planned organized workshops with policymakers and decision makers, and we have planned at the end of the project to organize an advocacy meeting to address the relevant message to patients and patient representatives and policymakers. And then for impacting practices, we have this scientific advisory group that is covering the 27 member states. We have the quality improvement learning collaborative as a way to exchange experiences among the hospitals. We have this training tool or package that we will prepare different types of material. And the idea is at the end of the third year is to scale up this project to 100 hospitals. We also have started a podcast to disseminate, communicate intermediate and final results, a safest platform that includes benchmarking of activities and benchmarking among hospitals, and of course, social media and our website. And to contribute to new line of research, we have the publication plan, including research gap. We have planned attendance to scientific conferences. In these first 15 months of the project, we already have attended or presented more than 15 conferences. We have planned at the end of the project a safest conference, and we also have, I think, very similar to this session, planned annual EU networking patient safety meeting with other funded initiatives from the same EU call, and also an open access free repository. And as expected result of this project, we think that this will be an opportunity to disseminate patient safety practices for cooperative. We think it's one of the most extensive implementation studies, and of course, several lessons learned will be extracted to share with different stakeholders.
Hello, thank you so much, Carola. I'm sure that we have learned many specific issues from your experience, because you are using a plethora of strategies to disseminate the information and to translate your target into practical issues in the hospital. So I think it's very useful for our debate. So thank you so much. But let me now to introduce to Noemia Besa. She is working in Slovenia and is head of research in a research institute in Maribor. Well, she is invited here because she's the chair of an action. The topic is how to introduce intergovernmental coordination from local to European governance. So it's a different perspective because as our audience can understand, there are a different type of projects, completely different, from different files of knowledge. There are also many differences, but in some aspects, we are sharing a similar challenge in communication, in dissemination, and also in the future. So thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise. Thank you, Noemia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this forum. I will start my presentation, but I would like to clarify that we are social scientists, most of us, so we do speak different languages. I think that my presentation opened. Okay, I have to exit, I believe. I always have problems because I have a Mac, and Mac is not exactly 100% compatible with everything.
No, but usually with Zoom it's perfect. So you can use
just
the
have
full
to go to
screen.
presentation. Okay.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
That's what I was looking for, exactly. So when we submitted our action 5 times, okay? We were not as successful as our other colleagues. At the 5th time, we finally got it. And the main justification was that the overall scientific community could not understand how cost that is transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, pluridisciplinary, whatever you want to call it, would finance a project that is totally social sciences. Time has proved them wrong, because when COVID-19 happened, the need for coordination and cooperation became an absolute science for all fields and a challenge, because with the novelty comes challenge, and all these black swan events as COVID-19, they do present us challenges. We were used to black swans events in the fields of social sciences. So we were not expecting a black swans event that was a health crisis. And of course, I'm a lawyer myself, I have a legal background, I'm not a political scientist, but both political scientists and lawyers follow events. Social sciences follow problems. They don't prevent, they don't foresee. We follow problems and we try to find solutions. Well, that usually results in creating new problems, but that's another story that I will not really touch upon because it's very, very complicated. So what is the main issue with intergovernmental coordination? When we're talking about coordination, we are usually talking about coordinating 2 aspects, but intergovernmental coordination is multi-level, multi-layer, and multi-aspect, because we have both vertical coordination and horizontal coordination. And we have situations when both horizontal and vertical coordination happen at the exact same moment. It's very easy to explain when vertical coordination takes place. It's, for instance, when a member state implements a decision from an EU body. It's clearly vertical. It comes from up to down. But then this decision, instruction, legislation has to be conveyed horizontally within the member state. First vertically from state to its multi-layers, then horizontally between same levels of government, and then again vertically all the way until it reaches the citizen. So it goes up and down, as you will see in a while. And what we found out was that even though we do have a definition for intergovernmental coordination or lack thereof, there is no process of coordination in the decision making. There is no cooperation based on coordination. There is no coordination based on cooperation. Why? Because we are member states. We are volunteer member states. We do not work as a federate state. Had we worked as a federate state, then the situation might be a little bit better, as it is in Germany and Switzerland. But in EU, it's very complicated. Well, God knows how complicated it is with inside our own member states, let alone the whole 36 countries that are now joining. So why to research intergovernmental coordination? Well, because we really need to make joint decisions, namely in healthcare, emergency assistance, and I went to topics that connect more with your action, Jose, because we have to understand that even though we are independent, we have these border issues. We still have border issues, even though we don't have borders. If there is a fire, and I will give a very peculiar example, in the border between Slovakia and Poland, there is a little municipality that is not accessible by a fire truck from Poland. So only the Slovakian fire department can reach that small municipality in case of a fire. Why? Because they are located in the base of the mountain on the border with Slovakia. If countries start discussing, this is my land, this is my assistance, this is my place, it's my fire department that needs to go, then the main goal of coordination and cooperation, which is one of the principles of the European Union, the principle of cooperation, is immediately abandoned. So there is an absolute need for cooperation. The same happens with the healthcare, water supply. We share rivers. Portugal and Spain, for instance, all our rivers are shared. If Spain decides to close the water dams or to open the water dams, they have to take into consideration the consequences of what such action will cause in our riverbeds, in the flow. And it was never approached in a global way. So it was always approached, and how do we internally coordinate and cooperate? So in a global level, as you see, we have the EU that sends instructions to member states, and member states send instructions to the EU also, because they have to report their needs, their quotas, and so on. The same as provincial level, and in this case, we are talking about specific countries because not all countries have provincial level. And later we have the direct that comes directly from the EU to local level, which is connected with municipality and proximity. But there is no such thing as one only direction. In this picture, you can see that everything is multi-level, vertical and horizontal. They all communicate. Even EU is not made by one institution alone. EU institutions need to discuss and cooperate. Each one of them has their own entitlements. So when we started the action, we started the action post-COVID. The first year post-COVID, we submitted it in COVID, but we started it post-COVID. So we didn't have the problems that your course had, but we had other, of course. So why is it that intergovernmental coordination is necessary in time of crisis? Because, well, initially, it was designed to solve problems. This doesn't say much because all policies are supposedly designed to solve problems. But it is true that crisis unleashes a huge potential both for creation and destruction. So the COVID-19 gave us the opportunity to research, namely on how border control took place, on how states helped in overburdening of hospitals, in providing healthcare, in sharing vaccines, in sharing knowledge, in sharing means to control the pandemic. Okay, we also noticed that there were several red tape issues, administrative gaps, policy gaps, total lack of coherence, total unadherence to rules, different approaches to the same problems by the different member states, different solutions that actually turned out to be problems more than solutions. We have developed a lot of work about this topic. It's available on our website and our social media. So if you are curious about the impact that COVID-19 had in intergovernmental coordination or coordination in general, do take a look. And we do use the COVID-19 example because it's true that we were totally uncoordinated. We were taken by surprise. We were not prepared for closing borders suddenly. I actually wonder if we should have closed borders. This is something that I question. Should we have closed borders? Should we have taken different approach? Should different actions have been taken? But of course, I will leave these questions to the health care experts, which is not my case. For me as a lawyer, I always think that the decisions that have the least impact on the life of the society are the ones that should be taken. but I'm not a health expert, so I will not comment any further, so I don't put myself in a place where I don't want to be. We realized that coordination mechanisms are of 3 levels. So horizontal across territorial tiers and in the decentralized state, between 2 types of multi-level governance, but simultaneously, and coordination at trans-border intergovernmental coordination mechanisms. We also studied the same situation for Ukraine, but I will not touch upon it. So we do reports on the state of the art because, yes, we are still social scientists mostly. I would love to have people from the exact sciences, medical sciences, health sciences in our action. It would be great for us, but we are 99% social scientists. Even though we are a very large network for a 2 years action, we are approximately 300 people. We have 39 countries, as you do. We have 72 MC members, but we do not really have people from other than social sciences wanting to be part of the action because they don't understand the problematics as being a global problematics. And I keep enforcing the fact that it is, because we cannot decide on policies without knowing the problems. So it's slightly complicated to address and design policies if we do not have the knowledge of the scientists from the other fields that may guide us into finding solutions. So we are composed by 5 working groups: vertical coordination, horizontal coordination, political actors, intergovernmental fiscal relations, and data mix methods and training materials. In the end, what we expect to have is an European Masters on Intergovernmental Coordination. So this is what we are working for, and this is what we are developing. We have a very good consortium of universities, but again, totally social scientists. And for me, as the chair of the action, I have put a lot of investment in personal time. So when I mean investment, I mean my own personal time into having the action, disseminating, trying to get people from other fields. That's how we started to cooperate, Jose and I. We discussed it in COST that it was very important for us to get out of the umbrella of the social sciences exclusively. We, unlike the colleagues, we use Instagram a lot. So is my Instagram opening? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So
that's good, Noemia. I don't know if you want to explain some of the things, or we open a debate. Or yes, you have time.
Okay, so we have videos from every STSM that we conduct. So all our STSM grantees make a short video that we use to disseminate, to share their experience, their findings, their outputs. We did the same with the trainees from the training school. We do the same with virtual mobility grants. We have podcasts, we have small lectures, we have interviews with the minorities, because intergovernmental coordination is something that it's very touchy when it comes to minorities, because they want to coordinate at their level under their conditions, and we have to understand the plurality and the cultural diversity. We were part of law schools, summer schools that are not part of our action. So external to the action, we promote conferences, round tables. We never had this kind of event, which is a very good idea, Jose. Thank you. I'm going to steal it from you. And why do we use Instagram? Because we realize that all our students have Instagram, and because COST wants metrics, for us it's great. We just have metrics. We present metrics. COST loves metrics. It works as much as it works, but our small lectures actually reach the students more than opening a scientific article, as you can imagine, to our unhappiness, discontentment, because we would much rather have them read proper scientific work.
Okay, thank you so much, Novia. That's great to understand not only your approach, also all the activities that you are doing to disseminate the information, because I suppose that specifically in your case, dissemination is one of the main targets, because it's to change attitude, to change social meaning of many of the activities that our governments are putting in up. So we have a very short time. We have
I will just close up.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
I will
but
really
very
close
short,
up
please.
to the results.
Yes.
No. Stop me at any time. I speak too much.
Yes.
So we already have 10 Web of Science publications, and we already have 4 Web of Science citations, which is very good for a 2 years cost action. We started an open research collection papers. We have 4 published policy briefs that have reached the European Commission and the Council of Regions and the Committee of Regions, I mean, and the Council of Europe. We had 1 international conference, 1 international training school, 1 book of abstracts, 14 virtual mobility grants, 18 STSMs, 5 dissemination grants, 3 ITC conference grants. We are part of ESPA, EPSA, CEPSA, Council of Regions. We are part of European Bauhaus, and we have created a very successful Ukrainian research poll in cooperation with Ukrainian think tanks in a way to use our policy influence to allow them to soon have a more peaceful and smoother transition into European Union.
So congrats for all the work done. It's great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me to introduce our 4th speaker, Dr. Pierre Saint-Igny. He's a medical oncologist, also a researcher, and is the chair of the Intersection Action. In this case, is focused on cancer, of course, and he's a researcher in Lyon, France. Thank you so much, Pierre, for connecting with us to participate. Please, if you could introduce in a very short time your action, and we can share some common aspects about what works better for us, both in internal and external communication, because I think that is not only because there are a lot of countries participating in our projects, so communication clearly is needed to disseminate the approaches and results, but also an internal channels are also great to achieve our targets. So Pierre, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Okay. Do you hear me, Jose?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm sorry for being late because I'm in my clinic. I'm actually still in my clinic, but I finished with my patient. So I will not present slides. So this way, you are sure that I will be very short. So basically, our action is called Interceptor. It means interception of oral cancer, and the idea is to work in patients who have a pre-cancer condition. Pre-cancer, for example, is a white or red patch in the mouth, and we believe this is a window to organize and to prevent the disease. So the way we are organized, so we are extremely multidisciplinary, which is contrasting with with the person that was just presenting his action.
Yes.
We have in our action data scientists, we have disease care management specialists who can be clinicians or pathologists, so the people who are making diagnoses on small biopsies. We have e-health tools specialists. We have basic research scientists, clinical research doctors. We have biobanking and biomarker specialists. And we have, of course, dissemination and socioeconomics, health economic specialists, ethics, all these social sciences and humanities. And, one of the challenge we have is to reach more policymakers. So we are a very young action. This is only our first year. So we are ending the first year. We are now 38 countries represented, 180 participants. We have international organizations. And if we just have so our goal is really to put together. This was the actual rationale of sending out this application to COST, was to create a community of people, because each of us basically with his or her specific expertise was not really focusing on pre-cancer, but all of us were interested somehow, and the idea is really to create a community in Europe and beyond, because we have we have people from South Africa and other parts who are interested and very active. So the idea was really to create this so that young researchers may actually focus mainly on pre-cancer. And I think it's really something that is currently not done. Most of the effort in research is focused on the treatment of the established cancer, and unfortunately, this type of cancers, oral cancer, they actually a very large proportion of them, unfortunately, will either relapse or develop another cancer, especially because of smoking and alcohol consumption. So the first challenge is to coordinate all these disciplines toward a main focus on pre-cancer, and this is what we intend to do. So in terms of dissemination, we are very lucky to have Antonella Cardone, who is CEO of Cancer Patient Europe. She's a very experienced lobbyist, and we started to have some interesting contacts with policymakers to participate to campaigns, and so that the citizens are aware of these conditions, pre-cancer, which is oral pre-cancer, which is very much unknown in the community. We also had a very nice workshop 2 weeks ago with health economics and LC specialists, which we actually started to point out 3 to 4 different tasks that will be funded by COST next year. And hopefully that will help us, measure the cost effectiveness of specific actions, and connect as well with policymakers. This is kind of a challenge. To connect to policymakers is somehow something that we need to improve, because this is something we have not really done very well for the first year. So this is just a very short introduction. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Pierre. We are closing this session, but I would like, because Pierre, you has introduced one of the main reasons that we want to invite all of you and to organize this type of session, because really I think that all of us in all projects, we share the same challenge: how to influence in the policymakers to change things. And maybe this is one of the challenge that we are trying to address. And I don't know, in a very, very short round, sorry about the time, but what was better for you in your experience? Some of you are in the 4th year, others at the beginning, as Pierre, others are in the middle of the project. And what are your plans? What do you think was better to address with this challenge? We can use the same order. Willy, if you could suggest 1, 2, 3 issues. I know that it's hard, but
I know.
Maybe
but
you can suggest. Thank you.
I keep it short. I think it's very important to indicate the impact that you generate, and also the return on investment. If you have investment, what is the effect for the population, and so that the policymakers should know that. And that is, I think, one of the main drivers for them to make policies.
Okay,
I will keep it here.
Oh yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Carola. Please.
Yes, I would say that we need both the outside track and the inside track. So the outside track will include targeting maybe larger individual or larger amount of individual using public messaging, but also the inside track in terms of collaborating more closely with policymakers and really make the research relevant for them. Some of the previous speakers mentioned about the problems, so really identify what are the problems and making the research relevant for policymakers. Also, at least from our experiences, not only in this project, providing evidence on the cost benefit of these strategies we are implementing, and of course providing knowledge on some alternatives that in some way are better than the current alternatives that are being used. So it's also kind of convincing them that this the added value of the evidence that is produced. I would.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carola. Noemia, please.
Yes, and this time I will be very brief. So our main problem is that even though we can calculate who we reach, we cannot calculate the efficiency and the efficacy of the not only the measures that we suggest to be implemented, but their implementation. So there are no mechanisms that allow us the complete follow-up of our initial work to the fine end results. This is our main difficulty. How can we prove that our suggestion is effective and efficient if we are not given the tools to exactly calculate the impact that it had? This is our main difficulty, really.
Okay, thank you so much. Pierre, you are in the first year, but maybe you have some ideas in a very, very short manner. I appreciate your input. Thank you, Pierre.
Yeah, no, so I think we need to make the citizens aware of this specific condition that puts them at risk. This is very difficult because patient associations typically are cancer patient associations, and here we are really more focusing on citizens and not really sick people. But we are starting to do this to have a sort of network of patients or citizens with those type of conditions. And also we try to reach to policymakers. We want to sensitize the European Parliament. So Antonella Cardone wants to organize this in year 4 of the action, when we will be mature enough, in an event in which we will explain why it's important to invest in this kind of personalized, more patient-focused prevention approaches. So I think we need to have those citizens aware, and we have to have those politicians understand that this is where the money needs to go for future research.
Okay, thank you so much, Pierre. It's clear. So thank you so much, all of you, for your participation. I think that this type of cross-fertilization is very useful for this type of action and projects. And I appreciate very much if we can collaborate in the future in this sense. So thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise and your time.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Andrea, please, the floor is yours to introduce our main speaker for today, Dr. Martin Weber. Andrea, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Have a nice late afternoon, or afternoon for the Spanish, probably just an afternoon. Let me to introduce Dr. Martin Weber, who is a background pediatrician, but work quite a lot in research of neonatal and child health, served as a program manager of child and adolescent health for Regional Office for Europe. And since 2021, he is leading the WHO Office on Quality of Care and Patient Safety, which was established in Athens. And he will deliver our final lecture on new strategies in patient safety, what is also the aim of the center. He is one of the leaders. So floor is yours, Martin.
Oh, thanks very much, Andrea, for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you. When I was thinking over the last few days how I should shape it, and I was listening the last half hour to you to try to see what you are talking about and how I should shape it. Of course, I was a little bit wondering what is new, what is not new for you. As you have heard, I'm the team lead for quality of care in the Athens office of quality of care, and we always maintain that patient safety is one of the main components of quality of care. I'm just trying to share my screen, and I hope it works with these multiple screens which we are having here, that I share it appropriately. Do you see it now?
Yeah, we see the presentation, and now probably just to start it.
Okay, and do you see it in presentation mode as well?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Better.
I'm not quite sure.
Still with the slides on the side, so I don't know how you want it.
Now I wanted to show you.
Only one slide, yeah, so still not.
Okay, I'm just going through the multiple screens here. I see that I can. It's always the problem with the multiple screens. Somebody was complaining about Macs before. Now I'm wondering with the multiple screens that I can show you the better way.
It's always a challenge, this digital challenge.
Absolutely.
At least we have an empathy to everyone, how it works.
Yeah, it's well. Is this a better screen or not?
No, it doesn't change.
No.
Sandra also had some problems before. I don't know if the system maybe is the problem, but we can't see the slides if you want to show in this manner.
I've just stopped sharing and I will share again because I think this is the...
Yes, usually
it works. We didn't know the mechanism of causal.
Eventually we will get there. Please bear with me. Apologies for this. Okay, let's go to the other screen.
Now it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. And you only see my, I think
Yeah.
I have to go back now with my presentation. But my slide doesn't move. Great. This is the presentation effect. You see performance of quality dimensions. Is this right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you see my start slide, I hope.
Yeah. Now it's a start slide.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for bearing with me. So I wanted to, and I was told by Andrea to put the emphasis on patient safety. So I thought I'm going to present you a little bit what we have been working on in the context of quality of care. And you see a slide with a complex thing on effectiveness and safety in the middle, I hope. Has this moved?
Yeah.
Good, perfect. Then we are synchronized. Okay, so I wanted to show you how we are working in general. What we like is this framework, which is coming from the European Observatory, which is a health systems performance framework for universal health coverage. And why do we like it? Because quality is at the center of it all. You see on the left-hand side, the functions of a Ministry of Health, of resource generation, service delivery, financing, and governance. And all these functions should lead into the intermediate objectives. And these intermediate objectives are quality of care, and quality of care is supposed to lead to the final goals on the right-hand side: health improvement, patient-centeredness, and financial protection. What are the main functions which we are having here? We are having effectiveness, safety, and user experience. And as a cross-cutting part, you see efficiency, equity, and access to care. And all these together are the components of quality. So this is the framework we are working with, and we have used this in a report which we have put for a member state consultation just about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, actually now, where we looked at the 53 member states of the European region and tried to extract some parameters, some indicators to see how they are working towards achieving quality of care and patient safety. So this is all put into this report. As it says, it's for consultation at the moment, which we launched, where we looked at the quality of care agenda in general. We have a chapter on learning from innovation and quality of care. We are looking at indicators to measure what matters, and we want to give some vision to further action. As I said, the most important part here are the country profiles, because we believe they can help us move forward. Of the different components of the performance of quality, we got information from variable sources, but the data sources are clearly insufficient. You see on the right-hand side, we got data on equity, efficiency, people-centeredness, and patient safety from different number of countries. 53 is the overall number. And for the area of patient safety, which I'm told I should focus on a little bit afterwards, we have only got it from about 31. The next survey I'm going to show you is 32 countries. How is the performance? We have created an indicator, a compound indicator of different areas, of these different areas. If you look across the European region, you can see that some things are better covered and the performance is better, but overall it's only about 50% or 0.5 to 0.6 for most of the areas. In the area of patient safety, the compound performance across these 31 countries who have reported to us is only 0.3. So you can see there is a long way to go, both in reporting and both in achieving a better performance across the European region. I don't want to go in more detail into this report. As I said, it's for member states consultation. We plan to get information back by end of October from countries to update it, and then we will have a final report hopefully by the end of the year or latest early in the new year. I want to quickly show to you another area of work we have been working on. Many of you know that primary healthcare was initiated 45 years ago with the Alma Ata Declaration in 1978. There was an update of this declaration 5 years ago in Astana, and in 3 weeks' time, there will be a conference on primary healthcare again in Astana, hosted by the Kazakhstan government. And for this primary healthcare conference, again, the European Observatory has or is going to publish a book, which you see the cover now, Implementing the Primary Healthcare Approach, as a short primer of it. We got a chapter into this book on the impact of primary healthcare on efficiency and quality of care. It's a two-way approach. We are looking at how primary healthcare affects quality of care, but then at the same time, how the quality of care approaches are making primary healthcare more efficient. We were doing a literature review in this chapter. As I said, it's going to come out in about 3 weeks' time. And we are looking at evidence on the different aspects of quality of care and how they influence it. You can see here a little bit of a summary, but I don't expect you to read through this. This chapter will be available in a couple of weeks' time together with the whole book, and then you can look in more detail. This book is supposed to lead to another more normative book. At the moment, it's the literature review, but then we would like to look at more normative functions, how primary healthcare can be used to strengthen health systems overall, improve service delivery, and what sort of aspects you can use to improve patient safety. Most of you probably know about the Global Patient Safety Action Plan, which was launched by our colleagues in headquarters as a global plan 2 years ago. We, of course, are bound by this global plan in the European region as well. And my colleague, Dr. Mafat Shawali has started a survey to look at the implementation of this Global Patient Safety Action Plan and has asked member states to report where we are. And I want to spend the rest of my talk to walk you through the different aspects of this plan and the survey and give you an update where we are. The plan has 7 strategic objectives. It starts with policies to eliminate avoidable harm in healthcare. It looks at high reliability systems, safety of clinical processes, and I've just heard another talk about this earlier, patient family engagement, health worker education, skills and safety, information research and risk management, and finally, synergy, partnership, and solidarity. And I'm going to walk you through these strategic objectives and present to you the information which we have received from member states about their performance in this. Just as a flash up, this is the more detail of this action plan. Again, it is available in its printed format, and each of these strategic objective has at least 1 core indicator. Some of them have up to 3 indicators. So it's altogether 10 indicators, which we are looking in more detail into. Some of them are at the very high level at countries setting up systems, and at the region, at the European region or globally, we take this indicator as a number of countries who are doing, for example, who have implemented a system for reporting never events or have a patient representative on a governing board in most of the hospitals. Others are breaking it down much more in detail. As I said, I'm going to walk you in more detail through this. So if we take strategic objective number 1, make zero avoidable harm to patients, a state of mind and a rule of engagement, the planning and delivery of healthcare everywhere. So as a component of this, the country is supposed to have developed a National Patient Safety Action Plan, which has been developed and is being implemented. Of the 32 countries who have been reporting in this survey, you can see that only 11 or a third have fully met these objectives. Another third have partially met it, and the rest have not initiated it. Another 40% of countries have not responded to this survey. Strategic objective 2, to look at a system of reporting of never events to be in place. Slightly more countries have achieved this with 13 countries, but you see a similar sort of proportion of countries who have partially introduced it, and the rest have not initiated or have not provided information. Core component is of doing no harm, a program for infection prevention and control. To have this established, you can see here we have made more progress with it. 2/3 of countries reporting say they have established this program already and have fully implemented it in their context. One subcomponent we were interested in this is the use of antibiotics in acute care settings. Of course, you cannot say the use should be zero, because the definition of an acute care event is that you probably have or you might have an infection which you might want to treat with an antibiotic, but you would like to restrict the use of antibiotics, and you would particularly like to restrict the use of broad-spectrum antibiotics. You can see how countries are performing in this regard. Some countries on the right-hand side treat very restrictively and are restricting particularly the use of broad-spectrum antibiotics. On the left-hand side, you see countries which are very liberal. For example, Greece, the country I'm living in, are using antibiotics in more than half of the cases in acute care, and 1/3 of the cases are using a broad-spectrum antibiotic. This is, of course, situation which is not satisfactory, you would like to provide feedback to the healthcare providers in these sort of settings and say there has to be a policy in place which is much more restrictive in the use of antibiotics. The third strategic objective of assure the safety of clinical processes has an indicator of medication-related harm to be defined in the country. Here we are more further removed from a satisfactory situation because the majority of the countries, 21 out of 32, have said that an indicator of medication-related harm has not been defined. Medication errors, again, this is something where I'm carrying out to Athens with this audience here, are very common in Europe. We have published this fact sheet to update people how common it is. You see that the annual cost of medication errors is estimated variably between about 5 to 20 billion, with at least in one country more than 200 million medications errors being done, and a large number being clinically significant. This is an area where we would like to raise awareness on medication errors. And in our report in the primer, we are looking at ways of reducing it by, for example, electronic prescription systems which incorporate alarms. I've been talking about primary healthcare a bit earlier with this report as well, and this is an area where a lot still needs to be done. Many of the patient safety systems are much more prominent in hospitals, which are larger and where it's easier to implement. To extend this into primary care services has been particularly difficult. And you can see that only 5 countries report that they have fully met this for primary care as well, whereas the majority say it's only partially met. Involvement of patients has been a difficulty. I said earlier in the definitions of quality of care, a patient's perspective is very important. It's the third component after effectiveness and patient safety, which contributes to quality of care. And you can see that, again, the majority of countries have not initiated to have a patient representative on the governing board of the majority of their hospitals. So obviously, listening to patients' voices is somehow suboptimal. The fourth objective is engaging and empower patients and families to help and support the journey to safer healthcare. So again, we are coming back to the thing of partially met of patients' representatives. And you can see here in this slide that on the left-hand side, repeating that it's only been partially met. Initiatives to take measures and report regularly on patient-reported outcomes and experiences is similarly not met in most of the countries. We have been undertaking in the European office over the last year an initiative to listen to patients' voices more in detail. This has been promoted by the Lancet Commission on Quality of Care to have surveys, national surveys, where you not only listen to people who are in health facilities, so like exit interviews, but also do customer surveys of all the population to find out how they are using health facilities and which services they would normally go to, rather whether they would prefer rather private facilities over public facilities. Because if we don't have this sort of information, we don't get a comprehensive picture on the patient's perspective. The fifth objective is looking at health worker, and I guess this is of particular interest to you because if you don't involve health workers, again, carrying out to Athens in the patient safety perspective, you will not achieve what you want to achieve. Countries, again, are far behind here, you see most of the countries, 15, have not initiated this. You need to communicate with the public. So publishing an annual report is very important. Only 7 countries do this fully. 10 other countries, so about half altogether, do this partially or fully to communicate with the general public about patient safety performance of their health system. Many providers are in the private sector, and industry, of course, plays a very important synergistic role in the promotion of patient safety. So here we are having the answers from our 32 countries again. Fully met is only in 4 countries. So in this very rapid review of the situation of patient safety in Europe, I try to give you a quick glimpse where we are at the mid of 2023 with the Global Action Plan for Patient Safety. And I've walked you through the 7 areas with its indicators. I think I could give you a quick overview of the situation. So to sum up again, patient safety, of course, is of global importance, and Europe is on the way to convert this into national actions. The WHO Regional Office for Europe is monitoring the implementation for the European region, the Global Patient Safety Action Plan. Despite progress in some areas, there is still a significant disparity in patient safety practices across the European region, with some countries having hardly implemented any of the action points, others having done a big proportion of it. But this highlights the need for continuous improvement, the exchange of knowledge as we are having it here, in collaboration across borders. By tailoring our approach to each country's unique context, we can ensure that the support is provided is effective and sustainable. And engaging and empowering families, patients, and healthcare workers is crucial for improving patient safety. By involving all stakeholders in the decision-making process and providing the necessary resources and training, we can foster a culture of safety that encompasses every level of the healthcare system. And with this, I conclude my presentation and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. It was really very well structured and very, very interesting. And at least 2 issues really strike my mind. One was about the primary care, because it looks like very neglected area, but even more that shoemaker walk without the shoes. So the care for the healthcare workers is the most neglected. May I ask you, do you have some ideas why it's like that we don't care about those who are caring? I mean, in countries, because it was clearly one of the most neglected areas, and it's not identified at all in countries.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a complex issue, and COVID actually has shed a bit of light on it. I mean, if you remember back to COVID, when everybody was very much in favor of applauding health workers, but then when it came to concrete action of involving them, countries were shying away from it or staying behind, because it takes time, it takes money, it's taking resources, and only when the tension rises high, then you see that you need to pay more attention to the health worker. I think this is again one of the problems of our health systems.
Thank you. I will probably pass the word to Jose.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise describing the situation. We have an audience mainly from Europe, but also some colleagues from Latin America. So good morning for all of them. And thank you for connecting with us this day. Well, it's curious because you are describing some, many interesting data, but that patient safety and efficiency are 2 aspects that represent a challenge for our healthcare system. Really is very relevant in your presentation, at least for me. And maybe it's one of the challenges that we need to think. And in this sense, this morning, we are learning about how the well-being of the professionals is impacting in the outcomes. And clearly, I think that in the well-being of professionals and other factors, of course, of our organization are directly related to satisfaction and also to efficiency. So maybe we need to learn about the data and to make things according to this data. And of course, I appreciate very much, but because you are clearly understand the targets of our network, and you have highlighted that how Objective 5 is one that in some aspect need also a new effort to achieve the targets. So I don't know if you think that from this type of networks, we can contribute in some manner to these targets. And what do you think about could be our role? Because we are close to over this action, but at the same time we have a more clear idea about the problems in several countries, the European countries. During this period, we have learned about the situation, but at the same time, maybe we need some inputs about what role we can do during this period. So thank you so much for your presentation, your time, and of course, for your kind response to our invitation to share your expertise with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's my pleasure, of course. I think it's an ongoing dialogue. And I hope I met your expectations if you wanted to know from my perspective. It's always a guess what you think, what you are presenting and where you highlight it all together. But as this is an ongoing dialogue, it can be intensified as we are moving.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, I don't know if any of the other participants wants to ask? Or...
There is in a chat that we have a question from the chat, but I'm not sure if I could find it. I just read in the chat that we have some questions from Ariadna Barta there. Yeah, here is this question. Do you think that by reaching some of the items, others would be positively affected? In Spain, we have public health, and curiously, efficiency is one of the most negative items perceived.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this concerns the spider graph with the 6 components. And of course, efficiency is always a bit difficult because it might be meaning saving money at the cost of some of the other items. I guess that's what the question alludes to. I mean, on one side, of course, you don't want to waste your money on ineffective treatments and unnecessary things, which would only cause harm, but no good. On the other hand, if this is just meant as a cover-up for saving money, then efficiency should not be used in the context of quality of care.
Thank you. I think we didn't have more questions in chat, and also not in our audience. So I will again pass the, no more questions. Yeah, here is confirmation. No more questions in our chat. So a lot of greetings come from the chat. So I will pass word probably Jose to close our session.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you to all of you. Well, today we have learned from other industries and from other actions and projects as well. We try to show what we are doing in this area. We have a very good debate about the well-being of healthcare professionals and its impact on the outcomes. And to close our international forum, our 4th edition, we have enjoyed an introduction about relevant data about what our countries are doing in terms of patient safety. There are some points that I think that we must take in account because there are some aspects that are not initiated in our countries, but at the same time are very relevant in terms of the well-being of the patients. The reason for what we are working in this type of webinars, forum, and every day in our institutions. It's my pleasure to say thank you to all of you. Thanks to our audience for these 2 intensive days following debates, conference, and I hope that you have the opportunity to improve your own activities in your institutions. So thank you so much, Andrea, thank you so much, Martin, for your participation in this forum. And I appreciate very much that you are following our activities on the website. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Bohana. Pierre.
Bye, thank you.
Noemia,
Congratulations.
it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Alejandro, thank you so much for your work behind the screen. Bye-bye. I see you.